Hey folks, welcome to Cartoon Insider, where we talk about animation, comics, and all things related to the industry that we love. Today I have another special how-to video for you, this time focusing on storyboards, or as I like to call it, the gateway to becoming a director. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you just a small favor. If you could just hit that like button and subscribe, that would be sweet. And really, it would help a lot for me to be able to continue what I'm doing here, which is to bring you an insider's perspective into the world of animation as a veteran who's been doing it for a long time, quite a long time. But yeah, I love bringing you the insider information on this industry and anything related to being a cartoonist. Sometimes that goes into comic books, mostly animation, and who knows what else we've got in store for you. Also, if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're already interested in getting into the animation industry if you're not already. That's why if you check down in the description below, you will see a link to a waiting list for an online class I'm teaching through the CGMA Academy based out of New York. And you'll see more about that at the end of this video. We'll cover that a bit more. So for now, let's get into it. Okay, so maybe you're interested in the process of what it's like to storyboard for animation, but more than likely you want to know how it's done. And beyond that, and this honestly is the trickier part, how can you use those skills to do it for a living? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover the 5 things that you must know to build a lasting career and thrive in the world of storyboard animation. And as we're going over those 5 things, I'm going to run you through a sequence from an episode from an actual show I directed on and did some storyboards for. And I'm going to take you from the script to the thumbnail process, and then finally to roughs and cleans. So you'll learn something in the process.
Let's go!
So what are the tools that you need as a storyboard artist to reach a professional level so that you can get work? Well, for one, you need a lifelong obsession with visual storytelling. For me, that was movies, TV shows, comic books. That sort of thing. So that's not too bad to start, right? Especially with that first 2, since really that's like 90% of the human population has those interests outside of work, aside from video games maybe. The key here is to be more than a passive watcher of these mediums, but a student. You'll have other teachers recommend various books for you to read, such as the 5 C's of Cinematography, book about film directing called Shot by Shot. There's a great book on just covering the basics of drawing and perspective and breaking things down into dynamic shapes called How to Draw the Marvel Way, which is a book I grew up with as a kid, and I'm sure there's many more. Really, you have to draw lots of things, especially living things, since these are the basis of stories, whether they're people or animals or, heck, even if it's a car, it's a humanized one, right?
Is it the most glorious day of my life?
So hopefully that's something you've already been doing and doing lots of. If you haven't, then you better get started. You need to have a firm grasp and understanding of how to draw perspective and how to draw from life in a fast and simplified manner, which I'll show you a bit of that too during this process. And you'll need to know how to create, pleasing compositions. We're also going to talk about that, and how to take all that and tell an interesting story visually, which will be the kind of the point of this demonstration. With storyboards in particular, I'd say it's important to take a class, if you can, from someone who is a professional. And, that's me, by the way. Did I mention that? Okay. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to really learn the ins and outs and get good at it completely on your own in a vacuum. So taking a class, not just going to art school, and honestly, look, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000 on expensive art schools and not necessarily even get good instruction that zeroes in on your particular interest. And if that interest is storyboards, You're not going to necessarily get as good of an education at a private art institute from someone who has not worked professionally or is not working with the current standards. Because not only do you want to get it from a professional, ideally you want to get it from a professional who's still currently working in the industry. So taking a class, I think, is particularly important for a aspiring storyboard artist. And as soon as you can get into a studio, you're just going to learn that much more. That's when your knowledge is going to skyrocket. Once you actually break in and you're in a studio and you're around other professionals working in this industry, that is the best education you could possibly receive. And so at least the class can help you get to that point where you could hopefully get in. All right, so tools of the trade. Now that we've covered some of the fundamentals, let's talk about the tools that you need to work with as a professional storyboard artist. First, you're going to need to know your way around what's become the industry standard on TV shows in particular for doing boards, and that's Storyboard Pro. It's fairly intuitive and easy to use, and it can actually do quite a lot, right up to animating the TV show. How much of these bells and whistles you will need to use in your assigned sequences really depends on the production itself, their time, and the budget they have. Some shows I've worked on want the drawings pretty clean and highly posed out. Others like it when the board is timed out with a voice track and even some sound effects into the timeline, although typically that's handled by the editor, assuming your production has one of those. You're also going to need to be at least a little familiar with Blender, which has replaced SketchUp as the favorite in-house software for building sets, props, and sometimes even characters for a TV show. If the production is designing all this ahead of the board for whatever you're working on, and honestly, that's not always the case, you will ideally have these assets to work on with a board. Okay, so let's go through the assets you need to start boarding quickly before we jump in. Here we have a script assignment, as you can see, and it's got the important dates when everything is due. That HO you see there is the handout date and the final board date. We'll get into talking about how you manage your time so you can hit those dates, which is really important if you want to keep working in the industry. The sample we're going to use is the beginning of Act 2 here. So there's that little script piece that we're going to work with as our example. By the way, hitting deadlines. I would recommend you watch one of my other videos, which talks about the 3 things that you need to be able to have a long and prospering career in animation, and hitting deadlines is one of those. You can watch the video for the other 2. Okay, so back to what we're doing here. As you can read here, it's interior Autobot base, corridor day. 2 of the main characters, Robbie and Mo, are skateboarding down the hallway. Robbie pulls off a trick as he zooms by the camera. And then as they're on their way down the other direction of the hall, Ravage reveals herself. She's one of the Decepticons. One of Soundwave's little personal Decepticons. In the script, it mentions she's stuck to the ceiling like a spider or something, which is kind of awkward. You'll notice that the director notes say that the ceilings are really high, and this might not be possible, so find another cool way to reveal. So that's probably what we'll do. All right, so after digesting and thinking about the script sample, maybe discussing it with your director, you begin the process of working out your ideas visually. You can do that any number of ways. Some people like to draw right on the script page itself, print it out, get a ballpoint pen. I used to do that, but it can all be done so easily on the computer now. I just prefer to do it all in Storyboard Pro. So let's open that up. Go ahead and create a new file. Let's do that here. Give it a name. Make sure it's set for 1080, which is the standard TV dimension that you want to work on for your format. You'll see the frame rate here says it's 24, which is pretty much the standard for TV animation, which is for our purposes, not particularly important since we're not doing animation. We're just doing a storyboard. When we open it up, you can see I have the section of script with the director notes. Those are mine, by the way, but as I frequently do, I storyboard some of every episode that I direct on, and that's sort of what we'll look at here. So we've got a few assets. So we've got the designs. From there, we can get started. Okay, so let's look at Blender. You can download it for free when you are ready to check it out. As you open it up, you will see that there are an awful lot of bells and whistles and menus and things to click on. And to be honest, it's pretty intimidating. But really, there's only a few things you need to know with this program as a board artist. So the first thing is to open up the file. In this case, the file you need to open is a OBJ. So you have to import it as opposed to directly clicking on it. You notice that as I scroll in and out with the mouse, I lose sight of the set. And to fix this, you want to click on the arrow, go to the viewer, just add a bunch of zeros here, and then you'll see as you pull out, you can still see it by using the wheel in the 2-click mouse system. So that way, it opens up your viewing field and you won't lose the geometry. So you can pretty much get anywhere you need to around the model, and then you can just take your snapshot when you're ready. When you got that angle, and then it's a Command-Shift-4 on your Mac, and then you can just pull that directly into your storyboard file as a background. There you can see my thumbnails I drew here. One of the things I did even before this too is I watched lots of skateboard videos. I needed to make a believable looking skateboard scene. So I watched videos, how to do an ollie, and it's just a little scene here, but I wanted to make that dynamic. So I needed a good, solid, interesting angle. Another thing to consider is what's your medium? Is it 2D or is it 3D? In this case, it was 3D. So that means I could move the camera in cool and interesting ways. So instead of just doing cuts, I just went ahead and made it one long shot for the most part, cutting only at the end when I really needed to. So you'll see it's Robbie and Mo skating towards and past camera. We get to see Robbie do an ollie, just a little ollie on a close-up, and then he goes away, does a little fancier thing up on the wall as they both skate away into the distance. And then who steps into the foreground? It's Ravage. And then that's when we cut to see the other side and see him leap across from one side to the other. You'll notice as well, when you do thumbnails, it gives you a good opportunity to see how your shots are kind of all working together on a macro scale. And one of the most essential things you want to be looking at is, in terms of composition, is where is that perspective line? And is it creating a flow that cuts well from one scene or one part of the scene to another? Of course, you never want to have a scene where the horizon line is going straight through the middle, because that's boring. So you want to have your horizon line up in the upper third or the bottom third, or tilted at an angle. You can see kind of at the end here, when I finally do cut, you have two shots next to each other, which are both in that lower third. So that risks creating something we call a jump cut. So that's one of the reasons why I tilted that horizon line on that last shot, just to give it more of a contrast with that in the previous scene. And so that's really one of the great things you can that doing your thumbnails in this manner really helps, is to to see that most essential part. Really, these thumbnails are the most important part of your boarding process. It's not the drawings, it's the storytelling, the compositions, and that's all established here. So now that the thumbnails are done, I'm ready to move on to the next stage. If the director has any notes, I apply those as well. And so we'll just go ahead and lay them out into the sequence, just pasting them in one by one. Once that's done, I can start doing the cleans. Now with the cleans, they don't have to be that clean. You'll notice in a lot of the board samples that you'll see from artists that when they're applying for jobs or on their websites, there's a lot of beautiful gray tones, very clean images, because they're trying to impress and make it look pretty. But essentially what's important has already been done, and you're just adding those final touches, not as a finished piece of art, but enough to give the overseas animator, or the vendor, I should call them. They're not necessarily overseas. They could be in Canada. They, I guess anywhere else is still overseas. But really, typically, I guess they're called the vendor nowadays. And you're just trying to give the vendor enough to work with. So if you look at the character sheets I'm using, you can see that the Mo and Robert, Robbie, they're wearing these bodysuits, and there's just no reason that I need to add any of the detail that's on these. I just have to go with the shapes, keep it simple and keep it clean, make sure the expressions are clear. And I have a special hotkey I use to fill the characters with white or any other color that I might be using. Sometimes if the drawings are kind of rough, the different colors for different characters will help differentiate one from another. But in this case, it's pretty clear. There's only two of them. All right. And then from there, we have our finished sequence, all ready for the vendor. As it turns out, they needed to be wearing their cyber helmets, which was a bit of a shame since you can't see their expressions as well, but that's something I went ahead and added. And there you have it. Okay, folks, so that about does it for today's lesson and insight into storyboarding for animation. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, if this is something that you really want to do, I have a couple other videos that I'll put at the end here that you can click on the thumbnails for. Like I said, I'm offering a class through the CGMA Academy. That's not due to happen until next year, but they offered me a chance to jump in sooner and pretty short notice. So their winter schedule starts on October 4th. And if I have enough people sign up, I can go ahead and on that short notice, I can go ahead and teach a class for this winter semester. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do, because I'm eager to kind of talk about this stuff in more detail with a class of students. And I would love that to be you. So if this is something that you really want to do, I think it'll be well worth your while. You'll get to have me as your personal director, and you'll be my personal storyboard artist. We'll spend 8 weeks together, and I'll be able to go in much more detail into this whole process of storyboarding for animation. Hopefully at the end of that, you'll have something good for your portfolio. At some point, you may have a valuable contact in myself as far as getting a leg in and getting into the field. So go ahead and do that. Sign up on that waiting list, click on that link below, and by all means, I'll just say once again, give me a like, won't you? hit that subscribe button. It ain't gonna kill you. What do you got to lose? All right, folks. Till next time.